Hello there, this is Kay White, and welcome to this virtual meeting about maximizing your virtual meetings. And this webinar is all about how to communicate, collaborate, and connect in the virtual world that we are finding ourselves operating in now more so than ever. And the intention of a webinar like this is to share with you ideas and inspiration that I have learned along the way from hosting virtual mentorships, group events online for many years now. And I've learned a thing or two about what works, and I've learned a thing or two about some things that really don't work. And the essence of what you'll come away with today is going to be how to show up more fully as yourself, how to manage meetings more effectively if you are hosting them, how to manage those time vampires who can often just suck away the time from everybody else. If you're a participant, how to jump in, but how to do it comfortably and in a way that makes you still shine in the way that you want to without being sort of pushy or sort of needy. And very much being conscious that at the moment we are making things up as we go along. And so the essence of this webinar is this will fit in a way that it fits for you. I'm not saying one size fits all, but I want to share with you these key pieces to make things easier for you. I am going to go to some slides in a second, and then I'm going to come back and really demonstrate what I'm sharing with you. But let me just show you, I'm going to share my screen with you, and bear with me as I do, because it does feel a little bit like landing the space shuttle running these things. But again, this is me showing you how I would do it myself in a very, if you will, natural way, not in a sort of having to know it all and get it all perfect. This is the thing. People actually warm to your imperfections when you're a little bit vulnerable, when you're a little bit unsure. So if something ever goes off on one of these sort of meetings, I don't sort of go all, I have to apologize, I just say, hang on a second, that's a challenge. I haven't heard this one before. Does anyone know how I do? And I have asked, I've been on webinars like this recently with hundreds of participants and having the chat going here. And I have just said, anyone can tell me what I'm supposed to do here, or is there anything I can do to make this better for you? So as we go through this webinar together, I am going to be very authentic with you. What's the point in being any different? And share with you, as I said I would, a number of things that you can try straight away. I have a few slides which will help sort of make a few things pop, but I'm also going to go straight to my notes and show you how I do this for whatever bits come away, whatever bits seem to make sense for you to borrow. So let me just move into slide mode. Clearly, I've said to you today this webinar is all about how to maximize yourself online, absolutely more so now than ever. We are using Zoom and Teams and Skype and obviously the good old telephone and conference lines to be able to communicate. And what I think is a trend that I have noticed with so many clients is that home working is going to become more the norm than ever before, even after the lockdown that we are currently experiencing. So this is a medium to really get used to and more comfortable with. And whilst today isn't all about how to actually look and be and dress up and all of those things, it's actually about the energy of how you show up. And that's really what I want this to be about for you. So these principles I'm going to share with you are the same as whether you're a host or whether you're a participant. Being productive and focused is what the point of these meetings are, not to the exclusion of human connection and how are you doing and what's going on for you and the little bit of yourself that you're going to put across. But it really is about how you prepare, how you're focused, because people, we all know, we've sat on meetings where you can see people and feel yourself drooping. And you owe it to people, I believe, certainly as a host, to really prepare and bring your A game, if you like, your energy. And that can be quite hard to keep going, which is one of the things I'm going to share with you about managing that. Making the meetings effective and fair, well, it's obvious what I mean as far as time and being able to make sure that people get what they need from the call or the webinar. making connections and relationships go further virtually. A lot of people have said to me, actually, Kay, I feel really kind of more connected to my boss. I've been seeing where his home office is, or I've been seeing that she, has, her back garden and what that looks like. I actually have a virtual background here just to demonstrate the power of actually having a virtual background. I found someone who designs these online, and I just thought it was quite a fun thing to do. But I've shown up at meetings with a Moldavian water bungalow. I've also shown up in the Top Gear cockpit plane for some fun, for some lightness. And people have said to me that they've had their dogs on their lap while they've been on a Zoom call. And again, this is about being in the moment with your team, with your group, with your audience, depending on who they are and what you know, because obviously there are lots of online events still going on. Respecting others' time and your own. I'm very fierce about keeping on time. Excuse me, I've got something in my eye and I'm going to let that be okay. And it absolutely does still count in your profile to boost your profile, to be authentic online, to be able to show up. I think it's a really, it says something about you to never have your camera on. And I have heard a number of people say, I didn't realize how I felt about it when everyone else was with their camera on and this person just had their sort of a blob, a sort of outline, without saying anything about why they didn't. Because it's like, well, if you're watching all of us, why is it that you don't want your camera on? So this is one of the things I'm going to share with you about the protocols, if you like, of hosting and being on virtual meetings. Now, just a little bit of background about as to how and why I'm on this webinar with you. That's me sitting at my desk in the days when I wore a dress, which I will again. But just a little background. A lot of people will always look at each other's careers and say, that's, it's all right for her, it's all right for him. He seems to have it all sorted. And a lot of people will say to me, well, Kay, it's all right for you. You're doing what you're doing and you're there on stages and working with corporate career women and all of the things that I do. But they don't realize that everybody who thinks that the line was a straight one, most people you speak to will always have a squiggly line with stops and starts and hard shoulders and fast forward moments in their career and in their life. And so Lily Tomlin, the actor, said, the road to success is always under construction. And I love that. It gives us permission to be evolving. It gives us permission to be not the finished article. And it gives us permission, and I mean this, to learn. And I know a phrase, and I don't know who I took to accredit it to, but a learning machine is an earning machine. And in my own experience, I wouldn't be here with you today if I hadn't undertaken all sorts of courses, all sorts of studies, invested thousands and thousands in my own personal and professional development to be able to do what I'm doing now. And I'm still doing exactly that. I'm about to be on a virtual retreat myself with a mentor in the States next weekend. And so for me, I'm also always looking at how can I develop and expand as well. So this is truly what I believe the road to success looks like for most people. And so this will be probably very true for you. And so this is, again, another way of giving yourself permission to develop, to learn, to do things differently. I started my career as an 18-year-old bright-eyed secretary working for an international insurance broker, the broker Willis. And I started at 18 as a secretary, and I worked my way through. I stayed as a secretary for about 10 years. And then I decided I need to get my hands dirty. I need to get into the business. I want to do something different. I want to learn. And so I moved into the broking side, and I ended up broking international corporate property all around the world. I traveled to South Africa. I lived in Paris for the company and worked from the Paris office. I went to the Caribbean a few times to broke business out there. And I worked with a big group of very roughy-tufty men, mainly. I was one of 3 at the time, professional women who were broking business, and we gradually were growing, but it was essentially a male-dominated environment. But I learned how to navigate conversations, energy, highs and low moments where I wanted to throw myself on the floor with frustration, but also I had a lot of fun. And I learned along the way how to make myself come across well in writing and still legally binding contracts that I would be drafting and contracts that I would be broking, but at the same time to build on the human connection and to be very conscious of no doesn't always have to be no, it could be not now, being able to bounce back from things. So I learned an awful lot that I now share with clients as I use in my own business, because I left international insurance broking in 2002, and then I moved into working part-time for the British Heart Foundation as a community fundraiser, using a lot of the skills of, if you like, the sales skills as well as the connecting and marketing skills that I use in broking to work in this charity while I worked out what it is I wanted to do next. And so I invested in myself along the way, did lots of courses, did lots of work with books and finding people. And back in 2005, it wasn't the sort of norm to take online courses. But now in companies, you're encouraged to go out and look for what it is you want, or use the internet, or use the resources that are there. And so I found my way by taking leaps of faith, saying yes to things before I was ready, investing in myself, and I still do that, but investing in myself, even when I was employed. I said to my boss, I want to go and learn French in France. If I take the holiday and pay for my flight, would you pay for the course that I found that I'd like to do? It's 2 weeks, it's in Nice. And he said yes, because I asked, but also because I was prepared to take part of the risk, if you will. This is the thing. So again, always looking at ways along the way, as I look back in on my career path, looking at ways that I can contribute, but also that makes it worth it and work for me. So I have now written, since starting my own business in 2006, working very one-to-one with clients. I'm now working with groups, and I host events, and I go into organizations and build programs to support the female pipeline. I have written 2 books. I wrote in 2018, It's Always Your Move, Purposeful Progress for Corporate Career Women. And I also have written a book called The A to Z of Being Understood. And I use the principles of what I've written in my work. I was very honored that Dame Inga Beale agreed to give me a testimonial, having read the manuscript. And she wrote for It's Always Your Move that it's a practical guidebook to help you confidently and strategically navigate the twists and turns and ups and downs in your unique career journey, which we all have. And so as a result of this, I am able to share with you, this is how I work. I work with women in companies and privately, and I work with their companies to support them with what they're already doing, to be able to work with business continuity and planning for women, to be able to make them step up and encourage them to step up in a way that they want to, that feels authentic to them. And so this is a combination of, these are the sort of organizations that I've worked with, where clients either work themselves or I have worked with those organizations. And I am absolutely proud to say to you that I, A, love what I do, and B, I know I'm really good at it. Clients get promoted, they are paid more money because they understand, and so does the company, how much more valuable they are. One of my clients was telling me recently that she was able to double productivity and reduce headcount based on being able to have some fierce conversations, courageous conversations, and very clear about what she needed to do, having worked alongside me with a group of women to be able to get in touch with really what it is she was good at and how and why she wanted to do what she does. So this is what, excuse me, I just want to share with you that I haven't made any of this up. This has been tried and tested. So just a few headlines here. We all know businesses are looking to keep and maintain and sustain their female pipeline. The male energy and the female energy in business work so much better than one or the other. I know this absolutely. That and it is absolutely a reputational risk at times. If you see lots of people leaving, it's not good for attracting new talent. So this is really the purpose behind a lot of what I do. And I do work, as I say, both in companies and privately with women, because sometimes a woman will come to me and say, I really need some help. I'm not sure whether I can stay here, or whether there's going to be a job for me, or there may be risk of redundancy. And so I work privately as well, and I balance the two. But my essence is really, how do you yourself personally drive your own career forward, take responsibility for it, but also show up in a way that's authentic to you. So I'm going to switch screens now, having given you a little bit of background. I am also going to give you an opportunity to stay more closely in touch should you want to. Excuse me, I need to cough. And I'm now going to go over to take the share screen off, excuse me a second, and come back to you on camera. So let me see how I do that. Stop share. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm back with you face to face. And why I want to do this is because I want to demonstrate what it's like running a meeting face to face with someone, with you watching. Now, just a few things here. I have a tray table, one of those things, if you would have breakfast in bed, one of those tray tables, and I use that in front of me on my desk so that my computer is lifted up higher. And I do that so that you're not looking up my nose, or I'm not sort of looking a bit sort of quizzical in places. And so however you can do that, it's really good to decide, okay, rather than sort of holding up my phone, or I need to stabilize myself and how I show up. So I have seen clients have box files piled up. I bought this tray table not that long ago, but it's been a really good investment because it moves around the house. It moves from my home office to wherever I need it. But at the same time, it's much easier for me to look straight at the camera and think about you as you're watching this and connect when it's at my eye height. So this is one of the first things I would say to you, and this is what I've actually done to be able to prepare for today. So just a little bit of logistical things that apply for both conference calls and for Zoom calls and all of these kind of virtual meeting calls. Thinking of your background. Now behind me I have cupboards. I can turn my background off. I can show you, but I didn't really want to fiddle about too much today. But I just have plain cupboards behind me full of files, but they're not on show. And these virtual backgrounds are quite fun. They're quite useful. I wouldn't recommend that you have sort of spinning racing cars as one of my clients had, because I said to her, it's really distracting. You want it to be calming, if you like, for the person who's looking, and also authentic to you. So think about your background. Think about noise. I turn my telephone off. I unplug the doorbell when I'm doing things like this. And I take the bells off my dogs who are around the house, because I don't want them to be making a noise. And can you believe it? My little iPad, I'd forgotten to turn that off, but I'm forgiving myself. So the background and the noise and the lighting. I have a ring light in my office, which I bought because I often use video in my work. But just having your desk facing a window, or with a table lamp on your desk, it helps brighten your face. Having a picture of you all in the shadows is not nearly as compelling and connecting as having some light coming towards you. So these are things just to consider. Distractions. I don't wear bangles or anything that jingle when I'm hosting calls like this, because they make a noise and we don't want that, as I come down on my desk, or having jingling noises. I wear plain things. This is another thing, and ladies particularly, and gents, if you're showing up in a big stripy shirt or a big sort of Breton kind of shirt. One of my clients, a lawyer, she was asked by her team whether she would go and put a pashmina around herself, because she was sort of making everybody feel a bit dizzy with these wavy lines. Now, I'm conscious that my background breaks up a little bit as I do that, but I'm thinking it's probably not as distracting as a Breton stripe that goes across here that needs a pashmina wrapped around you. Now, my notes for today, you can probably see that if I go like that, there's a little bit of a paper here. I have put those notes on something that are virtually eyelined, so I'm not sort of scrambling around down here. So I can still see them. I've typed my notes in really big type so that I don't have to have my glasses on and off. So these are little bits of prep. Now, I know after every meeting, you're not going to say to me, okay, I can't do that for every meeting I have. But you can do it for a lot of them. And you can certainly do them if they're meetings that really count, where you're actually having a town hall, or where you're having, you are really wanting to announce something, or where you're being invited to have a moment and say something, rather than having to read like this or read with your glasses. Just having your notes around you. What you've seen me share my screen, but being able to look at the slides, but look up at the camera. That's one of the big things. If you are zooming and all of these things, to look at the camera. Another thing, having water near you, because again, you don't want to be scrambling here. I use a straw most of the time to drink water, because you don't slurp. And if you had a moment where you find that you can knock it over or something, it doesn't go very far or very much. So I'm very, very careful about, I have not been wearing a suit or a dress for meetings like this, but something very plain. And for women, a necklace, something simple that adds a bit of interest and being polite, if you like, about respectful about where you are if you're still working. I'm not suggesting, of course, that you're dressing up for work every day, but some clients have said to me, I need to get dressed up a bit, Kay. I don't feel as if I'm really at work. So I've been wearing, a shirt, or I've been wearing, something like I'm wearing today with a bit of bling or a scarf that makes me feel more on it. Now, that's a personal thing, but I did want to share with you, it does count. Now, the other thing to think about is being aware about your sound. Now, I have a microphone here, and I'm going to show it to you. There we go. Now, my microphone I use to record my podcast, and so I had this already, but I do have a lapel mic that I can put just here, and it does make it more interesting. There's a study that says people will go with grainy video, but they won't go with trying to strain to hear what you're saying. So the better sound quality you can have, and I have my microphone fairly close to me so that I'm not shouting into it, but it captures it for you so that it's easy for you to listen to. So consider a microphone. If this is going to be home working for you going forward, or certainly we don't know how much longer we're going to be home working, maybe consider buying a lapel mic from Amazon, as obviously it's very easy to. The camera angle we've talked about, I can show you what happens. If I'm having to sort of go down here and look up, that's not so helpful. And if I show you what it's like, if I stand up and I'm looking down at the camera, it's a very different way of presenting yourself. So I want to really encourage you to consider, just for a minute, how can I show up in the best possible way, coming across in the best light, if you like? How can I do that on camera comfortably so that it's a reliable, quick shift about when you have these kind of calls? Now, as I said to you, taking notes, really important as well. And if you have notes like I have got here, making sure you have a page number on them, because I can't tell you how easy it is to get sort of scrambled and then get your notes in a muddle, and then you're in a hurry and you're a bit sort of blinded. So to clearly have either marked the number of the page you're on in advance, or just write it on, or make sure you always print off your page numbers. Sounds really obvious, but someone actually said, there's a great quote, common sense isn't that common, and it's very easy to forget these kind of things. Time devices, this is a really good one, and I can see this, I've typed this really big, so these notes are popping up at me and I can still talk straight to the camera. Time devices are really important. I have my iPad over here, and this webinar is not going to be beyond an hour, if it's going to be that, and I'm very clear about using my timer. Now, I'll talk about that in a minute, because I want to share with you some devices and ways to, if you will, pull back the time vampires that you can experience on calls, and how you can do it really respectfully. So I'm very conscious all the time of how much time we're taking. If a meeting is going to be an hour, then I want to keep it to that. And if I'm hosting, that's obviously one thing, that's my responsibility. But if I'm participating, then I will always keep looking at my clock. I don't like to be late. And so I will say to the host, or drop a note, or put my hand up, or whatever it is, to just say, I want to share, I'm going to have to hop at 5 to the hour. I have another call, or I have to have a break. So, where are we at, or at what point, can I circle back to you later? Rather than letting your day merge and all these timelines that you've got dissolve one into the other. Because I want to talk a bit in a second about energy. So recording calls, obviously you can see this was recorded, it's up there on the screen. And if you're on a live meeting, obviously you have to say you're recording, but at the same time the devices will say that. But it's actually really useful to be able to do that sometimes, to be able to share with the people that missed it. If you're hosting a town hall, to say we'll record it. One of my clients is hosting a weekly magic trick. They're bringing in a magician who is a friend of the firm, and he comes in on a Friday and they record the magic tricks with all the children of all the people who are working from home. They record the magic tricks and then send them out to everyone. It's another connecting piece. It's fun, but it's also another way, an imaginative way of using and bringing everyone together and using the devices. So let's talk first about hosting. Now, I know not everyone on these watching this will be hosting calls, but a lot of you will be either co-hosting, and a number of you will, because even if you're not presenting, if you like, you are working with your team, and maybe sometimes someone will say to you, look, will you host the meeting on Thursday? I can't be there. So to be ready is to think, how about hosting a meeting now? Because it's not like you're sitting around a table like the one behind me and kicking things around. You are really preparing yourself to be there, to be able to engage people and help and keep things flowing. So I would always say there needs to be a purpose to every meeting. And this can again sound a bit like, duh, of course it does. But I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in and I'm thinking, where are we going? What's actually happening? What's the point of this? What do you need to have happening? Why are you letting everybody, go off on tangents? And as the host of the meeting, you need to be something of a sheepdog. And if you think about a sheepdog, it's not dominating what's going on, a sheepdog. It's nipping and whizzing around and keeping everyone moving in the direction. That's what a sheepdog does with the sheep. So I believe you have a real responsibility as the host. If you're asked to host something and you're hosting a meeting, I think you have a responsibility, and I certainly take my responsibility of being very prepared, being as natural as I can, not being terribly sort of formal and reading to the screen or, jolting around, or sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm not sure about this. This I know takes a bit of practice, but let's also get ourselves grounded in the fact that we want people to be interesting. We want people to engage us and tell us something, enlighten us. And so why wouldn't everyone else want that for you? And so to forgive yourself if you have some clunky moments or you forget something is, again, another part of this journey of being more authentic and more real. And people feel it. They feel more connected to you. Now, here's a big thing, and it's easy to underestimate. It takes energy to host meetings that are engaging, because I'm leaning forward at the moment. I'm quite close to my microphone and I'm looking at the camera a lot. This is why I wanted to host this without lots of slides. I wanted to show you exactly what I mean. Now, what's the difference? And you'll know if I kind of lean back in my chair, and I look down, and this is really important. I think this is one of the things to really consider. Now, I know I'm away from the microphone. That's not helpful. I also know that, and I've done this kind of webinar live, and women have said, you don't look like you want to be there. You don't look interested. You made me feel flat. So if you think about yourself lifting people and bringing them with you, you are using more energy. Now, I am not as energetic day to day as I am in this moment with you, because I don't need to be, and it takes a lot of energy to do this. So what I want to share with you is, if you are deciding to project and to be more engaged and to look around and to speak to the chat, which often in these kind of meetings you can have a chat if people can't all speak because there's too many of them. And so I will look at my bigger screen, which is over here, and I'll say, okay, so Jane, she said so-and-so, or John, he said that this and this in his department, or now that's interesting. So this would be working with you, and what do you think about so-and-so? And I will engage with the chat here. People can hold their hand up, as you know, they can drop you a question, and it's so useful, and people love to be acknowledged. So if you're not even seeing everyone because you've got a whole host of people and you can't see everyone, you can still engage with the chat and talk to the chat People love it. And you learn an awful lot from doing that. So I would really encourage you to try that. So I will always say, give yourself a little time between meetings. Because if you're speaking to one department and then another, and then you're having a chat with, your team members, or you're moving and bouncing from one meeting to another, you need a bit of time in between. Obviously you do, for your energy and having, a comfort break and a cup of coffee or whatever it is that, you choose. But you also do need it for your energy. It takes a lot of energy for you. And a lot of clients have said to me, okay, I can't believe the energy that this is taking to be able to, rather than wander over to somebody's desk, to be able to talk to them over Zoom or on the telephone, and the pastoral care that we're having to offer, that needs to be offered, giving of yourself. You need to have some time to reboot. And I would really encourage you to be fierce about where you have your breaks, and that they're not negotiable, that you need to be away from your desk or away from the computer, because you can end up being in a puddle towards the end of the afternoon. And the people that are with you at the end of the afternoon get a very kind of limp version of yourself than if you were to have a break, more breaks than perhaps you think you need. So giving a meeting a name is a good one. So this is another thing about, why are we here? What is it that we're here to do? And so always making sure that, we're not having a quick catch up. A quick catch up is fine, but if you're running a meeting, you've got lots of people there, you can have a quick catch up with 1 or 2 people. You can't have a quick catch up with 10. It's going to be more where we now plan, next steps, or plans for week, third quarter, or plans for, second quarter, Q2 planning and plotting, for example. If you're in a meeting like that, then you keep yourself very specific. So it's useful to give meetings a name, so people can kind of differentiate the energy that they're in. I would always say that it's good to know who's on and have a jot of their names. Now, if you've got 100 people, I know you can't do that, but to be really conscious of who's watching, and to sometimes prepare in advance and say, drop someone a note and say, Kay, I'm going to call on you at some point during that meeting just to talk about ABC. And if you've prepared the person, for the most part, they'll be thrilled. It's very different to say, oh, and let's call on so-and-so. Now, obviously, day-to-day, you can do that. But if it's a big meeting and it's a high-profile kind of thing, you owe it to the person to prepare them. And you come across as far more caring and thoughtful if you've said, I'm going to call on you at this meeting. Would you be able to give a quick update, rather than doing it in the moment? I will always say about setting expectations. What do we want to have happen at the end of this meeting? I keep very close on the time. So I will say, okay, we've got 20 minutes. We need to be able to kind of corral ourselves in, and we need to get to decisions or next steps in certainly 10 minutes. So what's the next conversation? So again, this is a way of corralling people and using the time that you have wisely, without, again, coming across as too sort of, wait, come on, it's time to move, and, banging the desk or anything like that. And people do really appreciate being kept on time, but it is absolutely how you do it, not that you do it, it's how you do it. So I will always say, okay, so we obviously are heading towards the last 10 minutes. What do we need to decide? Who's got something that they'd like to add now? Let's go around, if you can, in 10 minutes with 7 or 8 people you can. Let's hear what's come up for you. Let's hear what your next steps are. This is asking for commitment. So, being very mindful that you don't then just merge into the next meeting, because again, we talked about your time and your energy that you need. I set my timer on my little iPad here, and I say, okay, ladies and gents, we've got 5 minutes. Let's absolutely get the maximum out of this. I want you to be able to hop onto your meeting or whatever it is you need to do next. So again, I'm making it about them rather than me. I've got to go. That's not as compelling as I'm thinking about you. I want you to be away on time. And I'll put my timer on. I'll say, okay, let's put the timer on. And we've got 5 minutes to make sure that then we're off the call by the top of the hour. And my little timer will go, so I can be completely present. Everyone knows I've got that going because I've said so. And then it'll go ding, 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 and off you can then say, okay, so we've come to that time. where are we now? What do we need to do? Do we need to extend this? Do we need to circle back in half an hour? But you keep people on track. This is a big thing. This is one of the big things that often goes by the by. And I've heard this said by so many clients who said, I just come to the end of the day and I haven't done anything. I've just hopped from one thing to another. I haven't really had a pee and I'm still in my pajama bottoms. This is, again, it's not a deal breaker, but it's about how you're managing your time. And if you're hosting a meeting, I believe you have a responsibility to manage your time and everyone else's. Preparing people on the call, I've said a little bit about I'm going to call on you in advance. But one of the other things I think is a very respectful thing to say. In the middle of your discussion on live, you've prepared the person in advance. But instead of saying, okay, so Kay, will you now talk about so-and-so? You say in the middle of what you're saying, okay, well, in just a second, I'm going to call on Kay to share a bit about ABC. So you've told that person it's coming. But it's not coming right now, but it's coming. So if you're half listening or if you're still writing notes, get ready because I'm about to come to you. So, in a moment we'll hear from, or in a moment I'm going to ask Kay to, it's a respectful thing and you're going to get much better response from the person than if you sort of catch them on the fly, because you don't always know exactly where you want to fit it in. And as I said here, I'm just making sure my own notes, prepared to call on people. Yes, and again, at the moment, I think more so now than ever, being prepared to add a bit of humour. I know that everything isn't funny, and I know that every meeting won't have an appropriate spot. But, if the doorbell goes or the dog barks, I've recorded a webinar recently about sending smart emails as part of a power pack of webinars that I'm doing. This is one of them. And my dog decided to shake its head and all its bells were ringing and everything right outside the door. And I just kept going, acknowledged it and kept going. Because again, this isn't about perfection. This is about connection and being more real, collaboration and truly communicating. So I've talked here already about giving people a bit of notice. Looking here, I've talked about the chat, and I would really encourage you to use that. I've learned so much from interacting with the chat. And in your office, just saying to everyone, or doing a poll, for example, this has been stunning. So in Zoom, there's a possibility to do a poll if you're hosting a webinar, just like this. And if it was live, I would be saying to you, okay, so what's come out of this so far? What of these 5 things will you do or not do? Or what could you do differently? And you've prepared the poll and up it pops. And suddenly you get this huge amount of feedback. I learned the other day that over 60% of women who were on my call had never thought about how they title their emails. 60%. It's like, oh, okay. And there are about, 70 or 80 women live on the line. So I learned a lot in that moment, and you can too. And people like to be invited to interact in this way. It also keeps people awake. That's the other thing about keeping the camera on, looking how you look as a participant, which we're about to move into, but also keeping people on their toes. That's why I always say having people's names written down in front of you, even if you're not going to call on them, to be able to say, and I know that's affected John, and John could easily say the story about so-and-so and so-and-so, but we're going to keep moving. And also, you'll remember, Becky, won't you, that blah, 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 blah. Now, John and Becky will suddenly sit more straight in their chair and feel more connected, and everyone else will be thinking, God, I wonder if she's going to call on me, or whether I'm going to hear my name. So this isn't a competition for saying everyone's name. It's more about the engagement, and this is what this whole webinar essence is about: engagement and connection. So let's move now. I'm going to take a sip of water because I don't want to croak through the rest of this webinar. Let's move in now to participating. A lot of the same principles apply: distractions, noise, lighting, angles, how you sit, using your energy. But when you jump into a meeting or a conference call, I would always encourage you to say your name. Kay's here, or Kay White here, or Kay White from London, because you might be on a multinational call. But just to announce yourself first is kind of creep in. It's the same principle as coming into a meeting and not saying anything versus, hey, Kay, not even sorry I'm late, it's Kay here. Now, you on a virtual meeting, it's important to be present and for others to know you're there and that you're not just sort of, in the corner. So not speaking for the sake of it, but being prepared to add value is one of the big things. Not just thinking, oh, well, I sat, back in my chair and I listened and I wrote a few notes, versus being forward, looking at the camera, or certainly listening when you do speak, adding energy, saying to the person, for example, thanks, John. Thanks, John. Yeah, that was interesting. My view is blah. Thanks. I will always say use people's names and refer to others. It's super engaging. It's very compelling. People love to know that you know them and that they obviously then start to know you even more. And so when someone's asked you a question, or who'd like to speak up, or who wants to talk about that, or who's going to come forward and talk about that, that's not necessarily the best way of getting people to do that, but we're talking about you being a participant. I would say, oh, thanks, John. Thanks, John. My view on this is blah, or in our area, we're experiencing this, or I'm not sure if this is the same for you, but certainly in our area, one of the things that's driving us nuts, so you can kind of hedge by saying, I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but you can still go in with what you believe, but using the name of the other person, announcing yourself if that's the case. This is Kay here from London. I would go. Try and be engaged in the meeting if you can be, because again, it's a profile piece. Going into the chat yourself, offering more, reaching out to people, saying you can get in touch with me afterwards if you can't, speak about it now. This is again you being out there, more present, more out of in the limelight. Offering an email afterwards or a chat, and visual cues, some of those sort of things. Sometimes, thumbs up, or sort of little emoji that gives a thumbs up. Being interactive, it's absolutely puts you on the radar, makes people remember you as somebody who's engaged. You're obviously listening, following up with an email afterwards saying that, that was really useful. Actually, something I wish, I wanted to say, but there wasn't quite the time. Would you like me to share it with the rest of the team? This is again a profile part, because when we are all out again, these principles will still apply. Virtual meetings are definitely here to stay. They were here already, and now more so than ever. I have clients who have said, we were looking at new offices. And one client was working with the COO, looking at going to different office spaces and thinking, okay, we need another floor. They have pulled that as a plan, because they are going to introduce new working from home on certain days. They are bringing in smaller desks, hot desking, lockers, things that have been out there for a long time, but that are now going to be mainstream. And so this is, again, getting used to this, getting used to how you want to show up on camera or on conference lines when you're working from home, and actually enjoying the advantages of working from home. And there are bonuses, of course, to working from home. So I want to share again on participations, being prepared to say that you'll have a go. Now, if you're in a meeting and, there's something that you've been working on, and sometimes women, depending on, how often you're asked to do these things, or whether you kind of come forward straight away, I would really encourage you to say, look, why don't I lead on that? Or shall I just fill in that part about XYZ? Or I'd love to update the team on ABC, and use what some of the things I'm sharing with you today. One of my clients, a man actually, he said to me, because we started working together, one of the reasons he came to me was because he couldn't get his point across in meetings. And he kept finding that even though he was giving this great advice and things that needed to be done on this project, people weren't listening to him. They were overriding him, if you will, and literally overshadowing him. And so one of the things I encouraged him to do was turn up the volume knob on his voice, because we all have one. I'm using my volume up a bit higher than I would normally speak. I also have a microphone. And I said to him, I really encourage you to turn the volume up a bit, which he did. But he said to me, oh my goodness, I nearly had to have a lie down after running a meeting recently. I was so forward, like you say. I was so using my energy to the extent that it was a lot more than I expected, and I virtually needed to lie down. It's worth the investment, though. That's what I would say. It's absolutely worth the investment. And one of my clients said it's been the making of him, having to run meetings like this, because where he used to kind of sit back and let his team talk, he's had to be much more of the sheepdog. And another client of mine said, hopping from one meeting to another, she said, I won't do it. I will say, if I can't go to this, I'm going to be 5 minutes late for that, because I need to stretch my legs, I need to have a drink, I need to look away from the screen. So again, this is you enforcing, if you will, your boundaries, but in a respectful way. So bringing this gently into land, I am actually going to share my screen with you again, because there are a couple of things that I want to show you before I bring this webinar into land. This is where we were, and I'm going to move down to where I was, and as you can see, I can't exactly see, but we're getting there. So this is what no one wants to see when they are hosting a meeting. People like this. Now, we don't want to be like that because it looks so disengaged and disinterested. But whatever, as a host, you don't want to do that to people. And so that's respecting how much time, where the breaks are. I can't tell you how many times clients have said to me, no one even thought about having a pee break. It's like, how can you expect people to sit for an hour and a half and not have a change of scenery or go and get a cup of coffee or top up their water and have a pee? So we need to think of that for other people, but we also need to think about it for ourselves. And so this is what we do not want to see, someone sitting there like that. So I really encourage you, even if you feel like that, it doesn't say well of you, doesn't speak well of you, and it doesn't also help you, because your energy, it takes as much energy to be kind of disengaged and disinterested as it does to actually sit forward and think, okay, even if this isn't thrilling, I'm not going to allow myself to droop. So this is one of the things I would say to you, that lasting impression. So if this has been something that you would like to take with you, I absolutely wish you every success in what you're doing at the moment. This is a hard old time, but making it easier has always been my intention. And so if you would like to take a chapter of my book and stay in touch, I send out a little newsletter every 2 weeks. I'm certainly not an in-your-face kind of mailer, but I send out a little e-zine with tips and tools and things to do and ideas and stories. If you would like to take a chapter, please go to that URL, kwhite.com/always-your-move, and you will take chapter 5, principle 5 of the 8 chapters, 8 principles of your career success. It's an 8 because it never ends, and your career success is about you driving and being responsible and in the driving seat of your career. And principle 5 is about shining in interviews and appraisals, be them online or face-to-face. Now, an interview, I don't mean necessarily going outside of the company for an interview, internal interviews. One of my clients has recently gone from running a team of 6 people to running a team of 60 people. Another running a team of about 10 to about 300. Both of them went through a series of interviews internally, online sometimes, with other offices around the world. And the chapter on shine in interviews and appraisals helps prepare you. Both of them used how to prepare, how to have your notes, what to say, what you might be asked. So if you would like to take a copy of that and stay in touch with me, I would be thrilled. It will help you in your very next appraisal, your one-to-one. It will also help you if you host such things. So a bonus for being at home for me is to share with you that we have 3 rescue lurchers. And our lurchers, there's Pharaoh, Jeffrey and Dee Dee there. We have spent a lot more time with our lurchers. My husband is working from home as well. And this is one of the things, again, in these moments of sharing something about yourself. I'm doing this intentionally to share it as a message, but also to share it as a demonstration of how you can bring more of yourself. The CEO of one of my clients' companies brought his puppy, his French Bulldog puppy, onto his lap and showed it to the town hall he was hosting, because he was saying, if anything is a distraction, it's having a puppy like this in the house that you want to squeeze and cuddle and whatever else. And I can't tell you the reaction to that, the response to that. Damien Gabil was hosting a webinar that I was on recently, and she was saying how authentic people are as they come across when you have a little window into their life, into their offices, into what's going on for them. So our three hounds have had much more attention from me since we have been working from home. Now, what I do want to share, and I've missed it, oh no, maybe at the end, sorry. I want to share with you this slide that is absolutely a demonstration of what today has been about. And whatever you take from it will be whatever you take from it. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. And Charles Darwin, who definitely knew a thing or two about evolution and change, said that. And I truly believe that we have to move with the times. We have no choice. And evolution is happening all around us, whether we are part of it or not. So I always recommend to be part of the change so that you have some influence on it versus waiting for the change to happen. So working in this virtual way is most definitely you being more responsive to change. So oh, this has slipped a slide, but I'm also going to allow it to be okay. I wanted to share with you, if you want to stay in touch with me and ask me any questions, there's the slide I missed, I would love to hear from you directly. Again, if it's some feedback from this webinar, I'm absolutely open to that. You can email me here with any questions, what, where, how, when, why, at support@kwhite.com. That's support@kwhite.com. So I have demonstrated to you in what I hope is an authentic and relatable way how to be an perfectly imperfect presenter, but also to give you some of the ideas that I absolutely use, that I recommend to my clients, because it is about showing up. It's not about all what you know, it's about who knows you. Not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And this is a way for you to be coming across more authentically, more real, and in a time where you need to be more responsive to change. So I look forward to hearing any feedback you have or any ideas, and I wish you well. Bye for now.